Welcome to another best Limitless Team video for UCL Fantasy, and there's a few changes from the Matchday 9 team despite the fact that the fixtures are pretty much the same, just reversed, home to away, etc. So let me know what you think of this team, which changes would you make, and let's just jump straight into it. With the goalkeepers, I've gone for Ederson and Neuer. Now, I talked about this in my team selection video. I think Liverpool are the most likely to keep a clean sheet, but we've already got 5 players elsewhere, and that's why we've gone for Neuer and Ederson, and I still back City defensively. It's just there are question marks whether they will keep a clean sheet in this game. Courtois has been the best goalkeeper all season in Champions League, but do I expect a clean sheet for Real Madrid against Chelsea? Probably not, despite their commanding lead in the tie, but I think a lot of you would probably point towards Alisson and just say he's the most obvious pick, but there's going to be some defenders coming in and also the attackers. I still think that Liverpool can get plenty of points and goals against Benfica, so I've gone for these two. I also like Neuer's kind of ceiling. He can get some points even if he doesn't get the clean sheet. The same can't be said for Ederson, just like with Mendy, two of the best goalkeepers in the last few seasons in the Champions League due to their defences, but in terms of their ceiling and the save points, they're pretty much non-existent. So these are the two goalkeepers. Obviously remember to start Neuer and bench Ederson. I'm not able to show you that because Ederson's already in my own team, but just remember that, and the same goes for all the other players. Those on your bench should be playing on the Wednesday, 13th of April, and make sure every player that's playing on the Tuesday, 12th of April is in your starting 11, and let's go through the rest of the team now. Some of the usual suspects would feature in the defence. We've got Thiago Silva just for that Chelsea coverage. There won't be many Chelsea players in this team despite their 6-0 win against Southampton. And I've also gone for Alphonso Davies, but he didn't start over the weekend in the Bundesliga. He came on as a sub, so bear that in mind. But I still think he'd be my favourite Bayern Munich defender. There's also Joshua Kimmich if you want someone who's just nailed and he consistently gets 4 points and above. Then Joao Cancelo. He's definitely the ideal pick from the Manchester City defence, and he's been the best defender all season. He's the highest scoring with 56 points. And then the two Liverpool fullbacks, Trent and Robertson. Robertson is in great form, despite his 0 points in FPL. And Trent Alexander-Arnold is obviously Trent Alexander-Arnold. He's just got that assist threat, and he can get a lot of ball recovery. So in UCL Fantasy, I do prefer Trent over Robertson if I had to pick one, but Robertson's form is undeniably better in my opinion. And that's pretty much the 5 I would go for. Would I consider anyone else? Maybe Mandava, just for the sheer ball recoveries he gets. But other than that, I wouldn't go for a Villarreal defender. I don't back them for a clean sheet there. The Real Madrid defenders, the same thing, and I also just don't think they offer that great value. If Eder Militao wasn't suspended, then I think he's probably the best pick alongside Courtois in goal. But either way, I don't really back Real Madrid for a clean sheet there. So I think I'd go for this 5 on the Limitless and then just focus on the midfield. Remember, obviously, the Limitless is basically like a free hit from FPL, but with no budget restrictions. For the midfield, I've still gone for Salah, but you don't need to, I think. And I said this even before, Matchday 9 and also FPL Game Week 32. I don't think Salah is essential in UCL Fantasy. Even in FPL at the moment, he isn't. But I don't think at any point during this Champions League campaign, Salah's ever been essential. Yeah, I'd still go for him in this team. I think he will bounce back against Benfica, and hopefully he's got a bit more confidence after his performance against Manchester City. Leroy Sané is featuring. I think he's going to start, and he's still the best Bayern Munich midfielder. There's also Coman and Gnabry, who you could go for over Kai Havertz, for example. But I think if there's anyone from Chelsea who's going to produce, I think it will be Kai Havertz, despite Mount's really big return in Game Week 32 of FPL. And Kevin De Bruyne, his form is really hard to ignore. And on a Limitless, this is a perfect opportunity to get him in whilst not selling Salah and having other midfielders like Sadio Mane, who is on the bench. He's got a great record against Portuguese opposition. He also scored a crucial goal, that equaliser against Manchester City 46 seconds into the second half. So I think I'd go for a midfield 5 like this. You could always back Bayern Munich a little bit more and maybe go for a midfielder like Coman or Gnabry instead of Kai Havertz potentially, but I think I'd settle with this midfield 5. Most of the front three is pretty simple. Lewandowski speaks for himself. He's still for me the best UCL Fantasy asset, especially in recent seasons. And Karim Benzema, his form is the best in the world right now. The main problem with this team is Luis Diaz. There is still the possibility that Jota starts over him. I think Diaz will start, but this is a bit of a tricky one. So just tread with caution in this regard. You could always go for Thomas Muller as well. I don't think he's a bad option, and he's going to be nailed. But Diaz has a great record against Benfica. He showed what he could do in Matchday 9, and I think I would go for him over Diego Jota, who scored yet again in the Premier League. Whenever Jota plays for Portugal or Liverpool, he seems to score, but Diaz is also putting in some very good performances. So Klopp has that big headache, and it's also going to be a headache for UCL fantasy managers to decipher who's going to play in which competition and how the rotation would look like. In terms of the captaincy, I think on the first day, it's between Lewandowski and Benzema. As I said in my team selection, I think I'd lean more towards was Lewandowski, despite Benzema's haul in the last 2 match days, but I think I'd still go for the Polish international. And as for the second day, that's where things get a bit interesting, but I still think I'd go for Mohamed Salah, or possibly go a bit different and go for Sadio Mane or Luis Diaz. And obviously you would get the lineup before you can switch to captaincy, you don't have to worry about that, but you won't know who starts for that Liverpool team on the Wednesday. The same goes for Manchester City, so these City and Liverpool players could be a bit problematic. As for the captaincy though, that shouldn't be an issue, and you can check the lineups and then change the captaincy accordingly. So let me know what you think of this team. Which changes would you make? And are there any other players that we haven't really considered? Up front, I think Thomas Müller deserves a shout out, especially Nunez, who scored a hat-trick at the weekend. So of course, he's very hard to ignore, but I back Liverpool to go through, and they could even get the clean sheet as well. There's also Joao Felix in the midfield. If anyone from Atletico Madrid is going to produce, I think it will be him. There's also Griezmann up front, but I would try to keep things kind of nailed down and narrowed down to these 15 or so players. There's still a few others that deserve an honourable mention and that can be very close to getting into this team. You could maybe even go with Müller instead of Diaz, and then instead of Ederson, go for Alisson. So there's a few changes like that you can make throughout the team. Thiago Silva maybe isn't the best pick, but you're also covering Chelsea that way with him and Kai Havertz. There's also Reece James if you want to go for someone with a bit more attacking potential. So UCL Fantasy, there's so many options at your disposal, and in that case, I think it makes things very interesting. But thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Check out my other UCL Fantasy content and stay tuned for that deadline stream on the Tuesday, and it'll be a great pleasure to have you on there as well. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and the Discord server, as well as the UCL Fantasy League, and you can also become a Patreon or channel member and get exclusive early access to all my videos. So good luck with Matchday 10, enjoy the football, and I'll see you next time.